Greetings, and welcome to the Wrebbit Peace Tower Paper Clock Update. I don't remember what episode this is. I'm sick. I've got a headache. I can't even hardly think, so I'm sorry for my stuttering and stammering, but you're going to have to bear with me if you want to know how I solved this, because it's pretty cool. So this is my, I think, 8th escapement that I've tried in this clock, and I have learned so much, most of which I'm going to try to share with you now. The first thing is cutting an escapement. Come on. Thank you. Cutting an escapement wheel is harder than it sounds, because I have been using a cheap hazard-fraught Harbor Freight scroll saw. And this scroll saw, like most, has a speed adjustment. And me being impatient, I had it up all the way at the highest speed, trying to cut these wheels. The whole thing vibrates, and you're going to be a millimeter or two off on your cuts just because the thing is so crazy vibrating. What I learned with this one is I can actually turn the speed down to a point where it doesn't shake the whole table, go a little bit slower, and get much more precise results. So up here is my island of discarded escapements. This is the second attempt at this particular wheel. The problem with this is it looks good, but the teeth actually are not evenly spaced. There's a whole section of this wheel that when you measure it based on the other section, let me just show you. We need one of these. So I have my compass here, and I've got it set as if it was the anchor. And if you measure from these, if you just measure two adjacent teeth, it looks great. But if you measure like this, you'll find that some are more than 3 millimeters off. Some are short, some are long. This whole wheel wobbles. It's a bad deal. It's no good. I don't know if that's because maybe when I glued the printout onto the wood to cut it, maybe I stretched it or something, but it didn't work out. Some of the teeth are fatter than others. No good. Actually, it's not this wheel. That was pretty good. It's this one. The first attempt of these. This one's way off. As you can see, I even broke the wheel. I was trying to cut some of the weight out because I thought that might be important, and I broke it and glued it back together. I don't think that's what caused the teeth to be off, though. I think I was in too much of a hurry when I did this. The teeth are way off. Like, that distance is not the same as, say, that distance, which is a real problem for the anchor, because the anchor don't care. So I tried and tried again, and finally I got one that is accurate and precise enough that it works. Look at that. Look at that. So run your scroll saw slowly so that you can see the exact line. Be as perfect as you can. If I get to feeling better, I'll upload the plans to this escapement in the description of this video. I know I've been promising that for a long time, but I haven't had a result until now. The other thing I've learned is that this escapement, I guess any escapement, has to be so precise. So freaking precise. You have to have a means of adjusting the anchor. You just have to. You have to have a means of really finely adjusting it. So what I finally came up with is this crossbar here. Let me see if I can get a good picture of it. I've got a pivot on this end, and it's kind of cut into a circle and slotted into here, and a pivot with a wooden dowel in there to hold it in this end. So this end is rigid. It won't move up and down, but it can pivot around this anchor. Over here, I've got just a slot. So I can take this and raise it. Let me get, sorry, I don't want to make you puke. I can raise this up and down here, and for every, like, say, millimeter I would move this, since this is in the middle, it'll only go up and down 0.5 millimeter. So I can make really broad adjustments over here and end up with fine-tuning adjustments over here. Brilliant. The other thing I ended up doing was I used to glue the anchor to its axle, but the way I've got this built here, you can't get the glue down in there. So what I did was I drilled a small hole and I found a screw with some very fine threads and cut the end of it off, and I used that as a what do you call that? Where you put a screw into there to hold it to the shaft. Oh, there's a word for it, but I don't remember. Anyway, that's working out pretty good because I can still adjust it by hand if I need to, but it's tight enough that it's not going to slip. So that worked out tremendous. I'm super happy with that. We need a better view. Could you please focus? Thank you. Oh. So the trick with these is that they just barely clear each tooth. Look at that. Fantastic. That's just fantastic. So one of the things I had to do in order to fit this escapement in here was there was a okay, up there, that triangle had a bar like this one that went all the way down to the gear. I cut that out. I cut that bar out. You can see the broken paper down there. Let me get something I can point with. You can see the broken paper down there where I cut that bar out so that I'd have room for this rod to move up and down. And then another thing I did was with my escapement axle, it was flopping around a lot because the hole that I drilled here to go through here was just a bit too wide. I don't think I could make it perfect, honestly. I'd need some kind of metal fitting. So I made another one. I cut it out just to hold the other end of the anchor axle solid and just glued it on there. And that worked out great. That way I didn't have to have two independently moving brace bars here. I was thinking of making two of these, but that's too much work. So this holds it in two positions and I can move it all up and down at once. Brilliant. I love it. So I will upload the plans for this wheel and that anchor, or verge, some people call it. I will upload the plans for the wheel and the verge, because that's the hardest part to figure out. And then this, I just cut, I'd say like a 1/2 inch thick piece of wood, the length of the cage, plus an inch over here, so I could have something to adjust it with. And then here's something. The original design for this frame had a bar, a diagonal bar going from this corner down to this corner. And I had to cut that bar out and make it vertical here. I repositioned it perfectly vertical in line with where the anchor will be on both sides so that I would have something to slot this bar into. So if you're thinking of making this modification to your clock, you're going to need to move that diagonal brace that goes from here down to here and make it a vertical one. I might add some diagonals later, but it doesn't seem like it really needs it. Especially after I lacquer this whole clock, it's going to be fine. Look at that thing go. I love it. So as I was fine-tuning this, I would watch it a while and it would stop. And so what I would do is I'd find the tooth that it would stop on, and there's a couple reasons it would stop. One would be, let's say this tooth would be too wide, and it would not let it disengage over here. So your first instinct would be to adjust it over here, but no. Go to the fat tooth and shave it down so that it can disengage properly over here. So that was something I had to do. I also, this edge of the anchor was too fat. You can see my little blue mark. That was a fat blue mark, and then I had to shave it off so that it could get down in there properly. Oh, focus. Look at that. I love it. What else have I learned that I can tell you? Okay, so I've got a properly fitting sized escapement, wheel and anchor. I've got the adjustable crossbar, because what I was doing was just drilling a new hole in the frame every time I wanted to test an escapement, and if it wouldn't work, I would drill a whole new hole. I'd fill it in, drill a new hole. It would take an hour or so before I could test in between each test. And no matter how many times I did it, I could never be precise enough. This gives me infinitely adjustable precision, and after putting that in, I could tell you it wasn't going to work any other way. You have to have some means of adjusting on the outside of the clock, where a big adjustment here represents a small adjustment inside. And if you don't do that, you're never going to be able to get an escapement like this close enough to work. I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I finally came up with this last night, and I'm just so super proud of it. Look at that thing go. Come on, buddy. Come on, man. So that's my clock as it stands now. It's a pretty good clock. Obviously, whenever I go from a 3-tooth escapement to a 30-tooth escapement, things are going to change. If I continue building the clock with no further modifications, then it will not keep time properly. It'll be so ridiculously slow that there's no way I could speed the pendulum up to keep proper time. And even if I did, that wouldn't solve the original problem of the weight dropping too fast. So what I'm going to have to do is analyze the rest of the gear train leading to the hands and the face and make some modifications of the gears to keep in time with the new escapement that I put in here. So that'll have to be a part 2 of this modification to the clock. And I'll, of course, upload plans for those as well, whatever changes I have to make to the gears. But gears are easy compared to the escapement. Gears are super easy. Like you can see that I made a pinion out of an index card right here, and that's working fine. Gears are super easy compared to that. So if you can get the escapement right, you can make the gears. Let's see, what else? The weight. I don't like the weight. Right now, that's too much weight. It's way more weight than the clock needs. It's loud. It's nowhere nearly as loud as the deafening escapement that was originally in here. But I can tell that it's pressing a little harder than it needs. So I want to reduce the weight. But if I cut the weight in half by looping it through here and back up to the clock, it will drop half as fast, but it's also not quite enough weight. And the problem, I believe, is not with the weight itself, but with the amount of friction absorbed through these gears here. I think I need to lacquer this thing and get the bearings sorted out a little better, and then there'll be less friction. And once I do that, it'll probably run on half weight, which will give me twice as much time between windings. So there we go. I hope that helps. And I'm really excited to, after weeks and weeks and weeks of working on this escapement, finally got one that works. I was starting to wonder if I could even do it. I mean, like soldering. I'm really good with electronics, but if I have to solder something, mistakes have been made. I cannot solder to save my life. And I was hoping that making escapements would not fall into that same category. But I did it! I did it! I hope you have a good day.